In my opinion, Fire-type Pokemon are objectively the coolest type of Pokemon, and that's a fact. They were always my favorite type as a kid, as their high speed and great offensive stats made it easy for me to destroy anything that stood in my way. On the defensive side of things, however, they leave a lot to be desired, so I'm going to have to be careful to make sure that my chances of winning don't go up in flames. Especially since the fire types tend to be pretty rare, and I only have a handful of viable encounters available to me. As always, a full list of the rules are in the description down below, but in short, I can only use fire-type Pokemon in battle, I can't overlevel my Pokemon, and I can't use items in battle. Let's get started. The journey begins in New Bark Town, where I am immediately attacked by a water-type Pokemon. That's a pretty ominous beginning to this run. On my way to Professor Elm's lab, I spot this fiery red-headed fellow, and he's looking into the window, so I approach him and... Hey. What the... Hey lady, did you see that?
Don't ignore me!
I head into Professor Elm's lab, and this is one of the runs where I actually get to use the starter Pokemon. I name him Tyrion, and he has a naive nature, which is plus speed and minus special defense, which is pretty great. After getting the egg from Mr. Pokemon, I run into the kid who beat me up earlier, and I exact my revenge on him with the power of Tyrion's might. When I return to the lab, I'm falsely accused of some serious crimes by the best police officer in Johto, but Lyra is able to convince this buffoon of my innocence. I then give them the name of my new rival, Joffrey. I make it to Violet City, and in the Pokemon Center, I can get the second member of the team. If you talk to Primo, he'll ask you to tell him what you think of him, and if you enter the right phrases, he'll give you an egg. Mine was Software Digital Download Siblings. A very normal response to the question, what do you think of me? I get the egg and it hatches into a Slugma that I name Bran. Bran hatches at level 1 and has a bold nature, which is plus defense and minus attack. That will be pretty good later, but early on I'm going to be relying on Rock Throw, and losing attack is not ideal. He also happens to have the Magma Armor ability instead of Flame Body, which is unfortunate. Luckily, after some switch training against Mareep for special attack EVs, he learns Ember and can absolutely tear through the Bellsprout and Sprout Tower, and the Elder as well. And now, we're ready to take on the first gym. Falkner leads with a Pidgey that loves to go for Sand Attack. Thanks to his low attack stat, Rock Throw actually does about the same amount of damage as Ember would, so I opt for the attack with a higher accuracy, and it takes Pidgey to the red. After a tackle, a second Ember knocks it out, and his Pidgeotto comes in. After tanking a Gust, I opt to go for Yawn. Then after a second Gust, Bran misses an Ember, and Pidgeotto falls asleep. I know I can live a non-critical hit from Gust if it wakes up, so I choose to stay in and go for a few Embers, which brings it to below half. Then I switch into Tyrion as he stays asleep. His Pidgeotto never wakes up, and 2 more Embers earn us the first badge. With the first badge, I can now use Rock Smash over in the Ruins of Alph to get some shards that I can trade for some berries. Then I head down to Route 32, and on the way, Tyrion evolves into Quilava. Staying under the level cap is tough, but thankfully all of the trainers on Route 32 and in Union Cave are avoidable, so I'm able to make it through to Azalea Town without having to worry about it too much. Whoa, why is everybody in this region so violent? Kurt asks me to help him get rid of Team Rocket, and we head into Slowpoke Well, but Kurt supposedly hurt his back, so I have to do all of the hard work. Once I defeat Proton, Kurt's back conveniently feels much better.
Right.
Clearing out the gym trainers in the second gym is a breeze, with our super effective fire and rock type moves. But Bugsy is an entirely different story, as his level 17 Scyther is quite a threat, even with our type advantage. I lead with Bran, and Scyther goes for Focus Energy, and even with a 4 times weakness to it, Rock Throw does only around a third to Scyther. She goes for Quick Attack, which does big damage, but thankfully no crit, and I switch to Ember hoping to get a burn since it does about the same amount of damage, but we don't get the burn, then activate their Citrus Berry. I know Bran can live another non-critical hit Quick Attack, so I stay in and he gets taken down to just 5 HP before his berry activates. Then Ember brings Scyther to the red. I have to switch here as Bugsy goes for a Super Potion. Scyther then uses Leer, which is pretty scary, and Ember does about a third. Quick Attack still isn't a 2-hit KO even with the defense drop, and a second Ember brings Scyther low. Tyrion also gets hit to just 5 HP before his berry, then knocks out Scyther with one final Ember. From there, he can easily finish off the Metapod and Kakuna and earn us the second badge. Believe it or not, that wasn't the battle I was worried about for this part of the run. It's the upcoming battle against Joffrey. His starter is now evolved and knows Water Gun, and we don't really have any moves that can deal with Water-type Pokemon. I also don't have the luxury of being able to level up the team, as the level cap only increased from 17 to 19. I lead with Bran versus Ghastly, and I needed to use anything but Curse. Thankfully, he just goes for Spite a couple of times and goes down to 2 Embers. This means Bran is still at full HP when Croconaw comes in. Although, instead of hitting a Water Gun, he goes for Scary Face. So, after a yawn, I decide I can stay in and do some chip damage before switching when he falls asleep. I foolishly go for Ember, and it gets the burn, so now Croconaw won't go to sleep. At this point, I'm expecting this to be a wipe. I send in Tyrion, who gets hit with Water Gun, to just above half. I decide my best bet is similar to my initial strategy. Try to avoid getting hit for as many turns as possible. So I go for Smokescreen and he just goes for Scary Face, which misses. With the burn doing damage every turn, I feel comfortable going for another Smokescreen, but this time we get hit with a Scary Face, which is fine because I plan on using priority Quick Attack anyways. It doesn't do much damage as I didn't have the opportunity to go for Leer, but he keeps using Scary Face for some reason instead of Water Gun. One more Quick Attack brings him low and he misses a Water Gun. Then he goes down to the burn. That worked out way better than I thought it would, considering I had no intentions of burning his Croconaw and had to pivot my strategy a bit. After chasing some birds around in the forest, I can go back to Azalea Town and get a very good item for the team, a charcoal. Back in Ilex Forest, this kimono girl asks me to show her the way out of the forest. Then when I offer to help, she says, "Aren't you lost as well? If you knew that, then why the hell did you ask for my help?" On Route 34, I run into Lyra, who introduces me to her grandparents, and her grandmother assumes that I'm her boyfriend. Lyra then vehemently denies it and sticks me in the friend zone.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
Now that I'm in Goldenrod City, I can stop by the department store and pick up some crucial TMs, as without them the next gym might be impossible. I pick up the TM for Reflect, as well as 2 Fire Blast TMs, as I have just enough money for the second after selling some items. At the radio tower, I run into Whitney, who is struggling with what might be the easiest quiz of all time.
Are you stupid or something?
Then I head over to her gym and get ready to take on one of the most notorious gym leaders in all of Pokemon. I lead with Bran vs her Clefairy, and unless it gets some crazy luck with Metronome, it shouldn't be too much of a problem. I go for Fire Blast, which takes it to the red, then she mimics my Fire Blast. She uses a Super Potion on the next turn, then another Fire Blast connects. I set up Reflect as I need it to be up before Miltank comes in for as many turns as possible. Then Clefairy goes for Metronome and gets Seed Bomb, which does a whopping 2 damage. Bran hits a 3rd Fire Blast in a row and knocks out Clefairy, and then Whitney sends in her Miltank. She goes for Attract right away and Bran falls in love. In spite of his infatuation with this seductive cow, he breaks through and lands another Fire Blast, which does just less than half, but still more than enough. I switch into Tyrion, who gets hit with a Stomp. Then gets hit with a second on the following turn, which doesn't do a ton of damage thanks to Reflect, but gets the flinch, then our Reflect wears off. On the next turn, she uses her, physical gifts to seduce Tyrion as well. Tyrion is then immobilized by love, and this is not looking great. She hits a Stomp, which fortunately doesn't cause a flinch. Then Tyrion breaks through and lands a Fire Blast, which does just enough to KO thanks to the held charcoal. That could have been tragic, as I had to avoid a flinch, Attract, and a Fire Blast in order to knock it out. After Whitney is done crying, she gives us our 3rd badge. And now the level cap gives me a bit more breathing room at level 25. Now that Whitney is defeated, I'm able to get a few new team members as well. Over on Route 36, I'm able to encounter one of my favorite Pokemon in the franchise, a Growlithe. I catch him and I name him the Hound. He has a mild nature, which is plus special attack and minus defense, but more importantly, he has Intimidate instead of Flash Fire. And perhaps most importantly, he's a very good boy. I pick up the Dig TM from the National Park, then I almost lose Tyrion to the Sudowoodo that's blocking my path to Akritique. When I get there, I head to the Pokemart and pick up some things that my mom got me with the prize money I sent her, which happens to include some Pasho Berries which weaken super effective Water-type moves. I head into the Pokemon Center where I can meet Bill, who holds the key to the next encounter of the run. When I go back to his house in Goldenrod City, he offers to give me an Eevee. In order to evolve her, I need to get a Firestone, which is obnoxious in HeartGold and Soul Silver, and I'll also need one for the Hound later on. I name her Sansa, and she has an impish nature, which is plus defense and minus special attack. Not the best, but not terrible. I get a couple of Firestones, and I evolve Sansa into a Flareon right away. I head back to Akritique and into the Burn Tower, where I have my last encounter for quite a while, but it's only available in the basement, and before being able to go down there, I have to battle Joffrey again. I lead with the Hound versus Ghastly, and after using Mean Look, he goes down to a single bite. This sends out his Croconaw, so I send in Sansa, who gets hit by 2 Scary Faces in a row. I'm not sure why he doesn't use Water Gun, but I'm not complaining. After a dig, he goes for his 4th Scary Face in a row, then goes for Bite while Sansa is underground. He finally goes for Water Gun, but thanks to Sansa's high special defense, she tanks it easily and then knocks it out with another dig. His other team members go down easily, and with him out of the way, I can head downstairs to get our 5th team member. I scare off the legendary dogs, then run around for a while until I find a Magmar that I catch and I name Braun. He has a mild nature as well, and unlike Bran, he does have the Flame Body ability. Braun is able to easily take care of the trainers in the gym with Feint Attack, which is great because they also give special attack EVs. I get the team to the level cap, then challenge Morty to a battle. Braun is able to continue his rampage through the gym with Feint Attack and knocks out his Ghastly in one hit. Morty then sends out his Gengar, which survives a Feint Attack, then heals up with a Citrus Berry. I was expecting him to go for Hypnosis, but he goes for Shadow Ball instead, which takes Braun to just 28 HP. Fortunately, Braun is faster and able to knock it out with another Feint Attack. From here, it's a clean sweep of the rest of his team for the win. This part of the game can be a bit tricky navigating the level cap, as the next 3 gyms are level 31, 34, and 35, so I'm going to have to choose my path wisely. In Olivine City in the Lighthouse, Jasmine asks me to get some medicine for the sick Ampharos, so I head over to Scionwood City, which also happens to be the home of the next gym. The fighting type Pokemon in the gym are relatively easy to deal with, as they don't resist our attacks, but Chuck's team is a different story. He may only have 2 Pokemon, but his Primeape knows super effective Rock Slide, and he has a Poliwrath with Surf. I decide to lead with Tyrion versus Primeape, and with the Charcoal attached, a Fire Blast does enough to take it out in one hit. His Poliwrath comes in and I send in the Hound to get off and Intimidate, and he's holding a Pasho Berry, but Chuck just goes for Body Slam instead of Surf. I swap into Braun, but he once again goes for a Body Slam, which activates Braun's Flame Body and burns him. The combination of Burn and Intimidate means his physical attacks will be pretty weak. I go for Confuse Ray, but he breaks through and hits Surf, which Braun tanks reasonably well thanks to the Pasho Berry. I have to switch though, so I send in Sansa and he hurts himself in confusion. I'm then able to time her dig perfectly against his Focus Punch as Sansa is underground while he attacks. The Burn activates his Citrus Berry, then Dig brings him back to below half and he lands a Hypnosis. Because his attack is so low and I have a Pasho Berry and high special defense, I decide to stay in and try to see if Sansa will wake up. He goes for Focus Punch again, which connects but does hardly anything. His burn then puts him into Hyper Potion range. Then after he goes for a Focus Punch, Sansa wakes up and goes underground to avoid it. He keeps going for Focus Punch for some reason in spite of his lowered attack. The AI in this game is a bit odd sometimes, but I'll take it. After a few digs and burn damage, Sansa is able to knock it out and earn us the 5th badge. I head back to the lighthouse to give Jasmine the secret potion, then head over to Mahogany Town, and on my way, I run into Entei, who is apparently able to walk on water. Over at the Lake of Rage, I have to fight the shiny Gyarados, and once I defeat it, I meet Lance, who asks me to help him investigate the town. Before heading back into town, I pick up the Choice Specs, which is a great item for us. I head back to town and become a key witness in an upcoming murder trial. Then navigate through what I think is easily the worst part of these games. The endless horde of massively underleveled Team Rocket grunts. About midway through this tedious process, Lance asks me if I'm alright. Am I alright? Shouldn't you be asking that question to the lady you literally tried to kill with Hyper Beam? I finish the rest of the Team Rocket shenanigans, then with the level cap at level 34, the Hound is able to learn the move Flamethrower, and I take the opportunity to evolve him into an Arcanine. Now he's an even gooder boy than he was before. Pryce is technically the 7th gym, but with Jasmine being 1 level higher and with me already being in Mahogany Town, I decide to take him on first. You would think that the Ice-type gym would be the easiest part of this run, and to some extent, you would be correct, but he does have 2-part Water-type Pokemon that also have the Thick Fat ability, but neither of them know any water moves. This might be the most obnoxious battle I've ever had in a Nuzlocke. The Hound just misses a KO with a couple of bites, but his Seal uses Rest and heals back to full. There isn't really too much to say about this, as Seal just wastes time by healing up with Rest, while the Hound heals the hail damage and snore damage with his Shell Bell. Eventually the Seal faints and Piloswine comes in. The Hound is able to knock it out in one hit with Flamethrower, which brings in his Dugong. Dugong employs the same frustrating tactics as Seal does, as it does very minimal damage with its attacks, but constantly heals itself with Rest. After a while I switch into Bran, who knows Ancient Power. And after 2 force out yet another Rest Heal from Dugong, the 3rd gives him the Omni Boost. This means a 4th will bring Dugong into the red, which forces Pryce to use a Hyper Potion. Now Bran is out of Ancient Powers, so I go for Recover, because 2 can play at this game, Pryce. Bran brings his Dugong low again, and this man uses a full Restore, and now Bran is out of Power Points, so I have to send in Tyrion. Eventually his dugong fails to go for rest in time, and Tyrion finally ends this miserable battle with a fire blast, earning us our 6th badge. Unlike Pryce, who's a menace to society, Jasmine is a total sweetheart. All 3 of her Pokemon go down in one hit from the Hound's flamethrowers, making up for all the lost time I'll never get back after dealing with Pryce. I head back to Goldenrod where Team Rocket has taken over the radio tower, so I get myself a rocket uniform in order to infiltrate the building, and man, I look so cool in this uniform with an Arcanine by my side. Maybe I should start Nuzlocking for evil instead of for good. Just as I'm about to get in, Joffrey shows up and ruins my plans. While tearing through the grunts, Tyrion finally evolves into a Typhlosion. I finally make it up to Petrol, and his team is pretty disgusting with 5 coughings and a wheezing, all with self-destruct or explosion. Thankfully the Hound is able to sweep through his entire team with Choice Specs boosted Flamethrower. I head back underground where I get to get revenge on Joffrey for being such a weenie earlier. His team is pretty underleveled compared to mine at this point, so he's a pushover. I head upstairs for a rematch with Ariana, who tells me this should be quite easy. Choice Specs boosted Flamethrowers from the Hound knock out all 3 of her Pokemon in one hit. She's right. That was easy. I head up the elevator and meet Archer, the guy who is making me do all of this extra stuff. Sansa is able to knock out Houndour with a dig, then he sends in his Houndoom. He outspeeds and lands a pretty hard bite, but Sansa doesn't flinch, then hits a dig and brings him to the red. Then on the next turn, she can outspeed with priority quick attack and finish it off. Last is his coughing, so I send in the Hound to take it down with a Flamethrower. With Team Rocket finally out of the way, I can head through the Ice Path and get to Blackthorn City. When I exit the Ice Path, this guy says I must be a real hotshot trainer.
You're goddamn right.
In order to live up to my reputation, I'm going to have to defeat Clair and her dragons. I teach Thunderfang to the Hound with the Move Tutor. Then I evolve Bran into Magcargo, which gives him a nice 4 times weakness to water instead of 2. I handle the gym trainers reasonably well, but they're nothing compared to Clair's team. All of her Pokemon resist our Fire-type moves, including a 4 times resistance for her Kingdra. I spent a while coming up with a plan, and hopefully it works out. I decided to lead with Bran vs her Gyarados, as it doesn't actually know a Water-type move. It hits with Dragon Rage as I go for Yawn. A second Dragon Rage activates our Citrus Berry, then Recover heals Bran back to full as Gyarados falls asleep. I then set up a Light Screen before switching to the Hound. Gyarados fortunately stays asleep, which allows the Hound to knock it out with 4 times super effective Thunderfang without taking any damage. She sends in her Kingdra, and here's where my plan kicks in. Instead of having Surf, she has Hydro Pump, which only has 5 power points. I send in Sansa, but instead of Hydro Pump, she hits with a Smoke Screen, which is a bit annoying. I go for Quick Attack to do some damage as I want to save Protect for the next turn when Light Screen wears off. Then she hits another Smoke Screen. Light Screen fades and I go for Protect, and that's 1 Hydro Pump down. The next turn she hits yet another Smoke Screen, then goes for another while Sansa is underground. In spite of the accuracy drop, she manages to land a dig. I go for another, but Clair finally uses Hydro Pump, which connects, but thanks to a Pasho Berry, Sansa tanks it reasonably well. I go for Dig again and she misses another Hydro Pump, and Sansa hits a Dig and activates her Citrus Berry. I go for Protect and waste another Hydro Pump. Then I send in Tyrion and she misses her last Hydro Pump. She's either going for Dragon Pulse or Hyper Beam for damage, so I send in Bran who tanks a Hyper Beam. She has to recharge, which allows me to set up a Light Screen, then after a Smoke Screen I land a Yawn. I swap into Tyrion with the Light Screen active, and now her Dragon Pulse doesn't do much. Then she falls asleep. I go for Sunny Day, then a Solar Beam just misses out on a KO, which brings Kingdra into heal range. 2 more Solar Beams bring her back to the red and she stays asleep, allowing Tyrion to finish it off with 1 final Solar Beam right before the sunlight fades. He also levels up and learns Flamethrower. Even though her biggest threat is out of the way, I'm still not in the clear yet, as one of her Dragonair knows Aqua Tail. But they're identical otherwise, so I have no idea if it's this one or the other one that knows it. I go for Protect hoping to scout it out, but she goes for Thunder Wave instead. So I set up a Sunny Day knowing she'll probably use another Thunder Wave, which paralyzes Tyrion. I send in the Hound to get off and Intimidate, and she goes for Dragon Pulse, which still doesn't tell me which Dragonair this is. With the sun up, Flamethrower does over half, but the Hound also gets paralyzed from a Thunder Wave. She now outspeeds, but once again goes for Dragon Pulse, then the Hound knocks it out with a Flamethrower. Her last Dragonair comes in, so I swap to Bran in hopes that this isn't the one with Aqua Tail, and she goes for a Dragon Pulse as the sunlight fades. After being hit with Thunder Wave, I set up a Light Screen, then send in Tyrion who gets hit with a Dragon Pulse and a Slam, but manages to set up a Sunny Day. I swap into Braun who avoids a Slam, then hits a Flamethrower which does over half. He's also hit with a Thunder Wave, but unlike the rest of the team, he was only ever coming in versus the Dragonair, so he's holding a Cherry Berry. With the sun still bright, he lands the Fatal Flamethrower, which earns us the 8th badge. That battle took me almost 20 minutes to do, but it was well worth it as I managed to avoid a death against one of the most difficult trainers I've faced so far. Before heading to the Elite Four, I have to make a trip to Ecruteak City, where I ascend the Bell Tower after defeating the Kimono Girls and they summon the legendary Ho-Oh. And, well, it is technically a Fire-type Pokemon, so instead of fighting it, I throw a Master Ball and I catch it. I name it after the only thing they'll be allowed to do. Then I fly back to New Bark Town and start my journey to the Elite Four. Over on Route 27, there's actually another encounter, as it's a 5% chance to encounter a Ponyta. I catch her and I name her Khaleesi, but I won't be able to check her nature or add her to the team for a little while. On the way over to Victory Road, I run into Ace Trainer Brian, whose entire team is just a single level 35 Mareep. I'm not going to get into a long-winded diatribe about how flawed the level scaling is in these games, but this is a bit ridiculous. I make it through the rest of the trainers and Victory Road, and Joffrey shows up to satisfy his humiliation kink one final time. Tyrion sets up Sunny Day versus Sneasel, then one-shots everyone on his team with either Flamethrower or Solar Beam until his Golbat comes out, at which point the sunlight fades and Golbat survives a Flamethrower at what must be 1 HP, then crits with an Air Cutter, but it doesn't do much. Then Tyrion continues on his rampage to the rest of his underleveled team. Now that I'm at the Indigo Plateau, I can finally get Khaleesi out of the PC. She has a hasty nature, which is plus speed and minus defense, which is excellent. I level her up and she evolves into a Rapidash. Then I level up the rest of the team and get ready for the Elite Four. I picked up a few useful TMs and I'm as ready as I'll ever be. First up is Will, the Psychic type trainer. He leads with a Xatu and I lead with Braun, who is the only member of the team I forgot to edge to level 48, which I didn't notice until it was too late. He's still able to KO the Xatu with a Flamethrower thanks to an equipped choice specs. Slowbro comes in and I swap to Sansa, and Will shows me that he's the one that taught Pryce everything he knows, as he ends up using Curse 4 times as well as 2 Amnesias, getting his attack, defense, and special defense all to +4. While this is annoying, he doesn't actually bother attacking me, and eventually goes down to a few Solar Beams from Tyrion. Jinx is an easy KO with Flamethrower. Executor saw what Jinx was having and ordered himself the same thing. His other Xatu comes in and Flamethrower isn't a one-hit KO, but his Psychic doesn't do much to Tyrion and he goes down to a second Flamethrower. 1 down. Next is Koga, who's been promoted from a gym leader to an Elite Four member. He leads with a giant spider, so I do what anybody else would do in this situation. I kill it with fire. His Fortress comes in and also goes down to a Flamethrower from Braun. Then I make a mistake. I didn't bother calculating how much damage a Gunk Shot would do to Braun, even with knowing he won't be able to KO Muck with a Choice Specs boosted Flamethrower, and he gets hit to just 13 HP. If that had crit or poisoned, Braun was done for. I knock it out on the next turn, then Crobat comes in. I switch to the Hound, who ignores his double team, then lands a Thunder Fang, which activates his Citrus Berry. He then misses a Thunder Fang on the next turn, and after a few wing attacks, lands a third Thunder Fang, which takes Crobat into heal range. A Flamethrower does over half, then a second misses, so I have to switch now. I send in Tyrion to finish it off with a Flamethrower, then he sends in his last Pokemon, but Venomoth is an easy KO with a Flamethrower as well. If you couldn't tell, I spent almost no time planning for Koga, as I took one look at his team and thought, this is easy. I'll focus all my energy on the other members. Don't be like me. Never underestimate your opponent, unless your opponent is Ace Trainer Brian. Next up is Bruno, and generally he tends to be one of the easier Elite Four members, whether it's in this game or in Fire Red or Leaf Green. This time around though, he has quite a few super effective moves against my team, so he's actually a bit tricky. He leads with Hitmontop and I lead with Tyrion and set up a Sunny Day. He goes for Dig, but Tyrion still knows Protect, so he's able to avoid the attack. A Sun boosted Flamethrower then takes down Hitmontop with a critical hit, although he would have gotten the KO either way. Onyx comes in, and this is why I led with Tyrion, as a Solar Beam is an easy KO. Machamp comes in, and I know Tyrion can live a Rock Slide, so with the Sun active I go for Flamethrower, which is a range to KO, but he survives at literally 1 HP before his Citrus Berry heals him. Then retaliates with a Rock Slide that gets a crit and takes Tyrion to just 4 HP. I'm not gonna lie, that scared the out of me. Tyrion is able to finish it off with another Flamethrower, and Hitmonlee comes in. It only has 2 attacking moves, High Jump Kick and Blaze Kick. I go for Protect and he goes for High Jump Kick and he misses and hurts himself. I then swap to the Hound for the Intimidate and he misses another High Jump Kick and hurts himself again. Good job, buddy. A Flamethrower knocks it out and then his last Pokemon comes in. The only move it can use that does neutral damage to the Hound is Thunder Punch, so he's able to knock it out with a couple of flamethrowers. 3 down. Next is Karen, and her team can be a bit tricky. She leads with Umbreon, who has Confuse Ray and Double Team, and is incredibly tanky. I lead with Brawn, and Flamethrower does over half. Then she goes for Double Team, and Brawn misses a second Flamethrower. Then gets hit with Feint Attack. Fortunately, he connects with his third Flamethrower for the KO. Murkrow comes in and goes down to a single Flamethrower. In comes her biggest threat, her Houndoom, so I retaliate with a Hound of my own. She goes for a Crunch, then I go for Thunderfang as I need to get some damage in before getting hit pretty hard with a Dark Pulse. I switch to Sansa, who tanks a Dark Pulse reasonably well, then tanks another before going for Dig. Dig wasn't quite a one-hit KO, so the Thunderfang damage was crucial as Sansa now does enough damage to knock it out. Gengar comes in and I would love to stay in and go for a Bite, but Sansa is a bit too low, so I switch to Khaleesi, who gets hit with a Focus Blast. I know she can live another non-critical hit, so I stay in and go for the Fire Blast, which takes Gengar low. Then she just goes for Spite and gets rid of the rest of my Fire Blast power points. I was expecting her to go for Destiny Bond here, so I went for Bounce hoping to avoid knocking it out this turn, but she ends up going for Focus Blast. Then never uses Destiny Bond and goes down to a Bounce. Last is her Vileplume, and it's obviously not a threat to my Fire-type Pokemon. With Karen defeated, only the champion remains. One of the main reasons I was so ill-prepared for Koga is because I was very worried about how I was going to possibly defeat Lance, as his entire team resists our Fire-type moves. I've made it this far without losing anyone, but I think that's about to end here. I just hope he treats me better than that lady he killed in Mahogany Town. He leads with Gyarados, so I send out Tyrion and go for Sunny Day, which in combination with a held Pasho Berry greatly reduces the amount of damage Waterfall does. Solar Beam is a guaranteed 3-hit KO, but unfortunately the second hit brings Gyarados into heal range. Tyrion then gets hit to just 12 HP with a Waterfall. I go for another Solar Beam as he heals, which in hindsight was a mistake, as I should have just switched to the Hound, who comes in on the next turn and gets hit with a Waterfall before the sunlight fades, then knocks it out with the Thunderfang. Aerodactyl comes in and this thing is a massive problem for us, so I send out the only team member fast enough to outspeed it, Khaleesi. Little does she know, she's being sent into battle to be sacrificed. This is going to be her last ride. She comes in and Aerodactyl misses a Rock Slide. She outspeeds and I decide to go for Bounce over Fire Blast in order to try and get a Paralysis, but it doesn't. Then she gets hit with a Rock Slide, but a held Charty Berry prevents her from being knocked out. So I try again with another Bounce and it gets the Paralysis, which is huge. Then our majestic queen goes down to another Rock Slide. Her death will not be in vain, and her sacrifice will always be remembered. This allows for a clean switch into Bran, who can now outspeed and set up a Reflect. Aerodactyl then misses another Rock Slide. Unfortunately, Ancient Power just misses the KO, and due to his pressure ability, takes up 4 of the 7 power points I have on Bran's only attacking move in order to knock it out. On the bright side, he does get the Omni Boost. One of Lance's level 49 Dragonites comes in and goes for Thunder, which activates Bran's Citrus Berry. Then he hits an Ancient Power, which does a ton of damage. Since it outspeeds, I go for Recover, but he misses his Thunder, so Bran is back to full HP as a Reflect wears off. He then misses a Dragon Rush and I get to set up another Reflect. Then he misses yet another Dragon Rush. Man, that was lucky. A second Ancient Power knocks it out and his level 50 Dragonite comes in. He goes for Outrage, which does basically nothing with Reflect up. I go for Yawn, then Recover after taking another hit from Outrage. Then his Dragonite gets confused and falls asleep. I was going to save my last Ancient Power for his Charizard, but in order to knock out this Dragonite, I need to do some damage to it. So I use the last one and it activates his Citrus Berry. Our Reflect wears off and then Dragonite wakes up and breaks through Confusion to hit an Outrage. Then I set up another Reflect. Dragonite snaps out of Confusion and Bran recovers almost all of his HP again. After his third Outrage, Bran uses Yawn again. I need to wait for it to fall asleep, so I go for Recover, but he hurts himself in Confusion before falling asleep. This allows me to cleanly switch into Sansa, who I've taught the move Natural Gift, and given an Aspear Berry which turns it into a 60 base power physical Ice-type move, which knocks out his Dragonite. His last Dragonite comes in and I send Bran back in, but this time he gets hit with Thunder Wave. I try to set up Reflect, but he gets hit with the Dragon Rush and flinches. On the following turn he misses a Dragon Rush, but Bran is fully paralyzed. Then on the next turn he lands a critical hit Dragon Rush and he knocks out Bran. That was pretty rough, but with all the misses he had earlier in the fight, I can't exactly complain about bad luck. Rest in peace, my friend. I send in the Hound to get an Intimidate off, and I've taught him Dragon Pulse, which does just over half before he too gets hit with a Thunder Wave. I swap into Braun, who can live a non-critical hit from his attacks, and he gets hit with a Hyper Beam to just 62 HP. Then he finishes it off with a Natural Gift. Last is his Charizard, who should be the easiest member of his team to deal with, but without Bran and with everyone pretty low, it's still a threat. I go for Confuse Ray hoping for some good luck and he hurts himself in confusion. I don't really want to swap anyone in on an Air Slash, so I just go for Flamethrower and he misses an Air Slash. I go for another Confuse Ray and he hurts himself in confusion again. Then a Flamethrower on the next turn gets a higher roll. Then he lands a Shadow Claw, but Braun hangs on with just 20 HP. Then a Flamethrower takes him to literally 1 HP. Seriously, how many times are these Pokemon going to hang on with exactly 1 HP? But his Charizard hurts itself in confusion and knocks itself out. With that, Lance is defeated, and we've beaten the Elite Four. Coming out of that battle with only losing 2 team members surprised me quite a bit. As I had intended on using Khaleesi as a sacrifice in the first place, I expected to lose more than just her and Bran. Because I still have 4 team members alive, and one more viable encounter in Kanto, I decide to stick around and take on Red. I catch a Houndour that I name Hodor, then clear through Kanto with ease and make my way to the top of Mount Silver, and challenge Red to the final battle of the run. I lead with Tyrion versus Pikachu as he's the only one on the team that can learn the move Earthquake, and he's able to outspeed and knock it out in one hit. This brings in Blastoise. I set up Sunny Day and he goes for Focus Blast instead of a water move, which connects and doesn't do a ton of damage. I go for Solar Beam and it just misses a KO as he connects with another Focus Blast. Red heals and I hit it with another Solar Beam, then one more knocks it out. Lapras comes out and because there's still one more turn of sunlight, Tyrion is able to get off one more Solar Beam which takes it low. Then he gets hit with a Brine, but a held Pasho Berry helps him survive at just 16 HP. Lapras is now low enough to be knocked out with a Flamethrower. Snorlax comes in and I should sacrifice Tyrion here, but I don't have the heart to do it, so I swap into the Hound and get the Intimidate off, and then he gets hit with Crunch, which doesn't do much before he heals a bit with the leftovers that I stole from the other Snorlax using Thief. I taught him the Dig TM so I can avoid attacks and in between turns heal a bit with leftovers, and while it's an effective strategy, it does take a lot of time. Eventually a Dig takes him low, but he heals, so I start the process over again and one of his Crunches finally gets a defense drop. I bring him low again and the Hound gets hit to just 59 HP and gets another defense drop. Then he finishes it off with an Extreme Speed. Red sends out his Charizard and I'm not sure what move it's going to go for, as at -2 defense it might see a kill with Flare Blitz. I think it's more likely to use Air Slash or Dragon Pulse, which are special moves, so I swap into Sansa and it was in fact an Air Slash and she tanks it pretty well. She then gets outsped and tanks a Dragon Pulse, then a natural gift with a held Charity Berry turns it into a 4-time super effective Rock type move and knocks out the Charizard in one hit. All Red has left is the Grass type Pokemon versus my team of Fire types and he sends out Venusaur. I didn't want to risk a Fire Fang miss and Sansa is pretty low, so I send in Braun who gets hit with a Sleep Powder. I hadn't considered that. I leave Braun in hoping he'll wake up as he has the Choice Specs attached, but he doesn't wake up, and 2 Sludge Bombs takes him low. Again, I should sacrifice him here, but I don't feel the need to, with this being his last Pokemon and us having the type advantage on multiple team members. I swap into Hodor and now that the team has 2 dogs instead of 1, we're unstoppable. Sludge Bomb takes him to below half, then he goes for Flamethrower and Venusaur survives. Of all the Pokemon on Red's team to lose someone to in this battle, it was the Grass Pokemon. Rest in peace, Hodor. We hardly knew you. Tyrion comes in with his 16 HP, and after Red heals, he knocks it out with a single Flamethrower, winning us the battle and the run. When I started this run, I definitely thought it would take multiple attempts, but the pure offensive prowess of the Fire type was truly on display here. If you've made it this far, I just want to thank you for sticking around. If you liked what you saw, please consider giving the video a like, and if you want to see more content like this, consider subscribing to the channel as well, as I'll be pumping out new content regularly. It's about time for me to head out. Thanks for watching, and I'll smell you later.